Okay.
There you go. And you're recording. Good for you.
Yes.
Woo.
All right. Why are we not? Okay, now you got it, right?
Yep.
I can see it. Chapter 173.
Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, now we got it. All right.
But at the bottom of the screen, click on OK because it tells you the meeting's being recorded.
Click on at the bottom of the
On at the
screen.
bottom of my screen, it says this meeting is being recorded. And then it has a bar that says OK. Whatever. On my end is
Oh,
at the top
it
of the
says pause
screen.
or stop recording.
No.
I think we're okay.
Okay, let's go.
We're going to go with it. All right. So 173B, 173C covers confidentiality communications between victims and counselors. So this, um, when you completed your 30 hours of training, that is what gave you the confidentiality to then speak to victims.
Mhm.
So it covers all confidential. So there's two sets of rules. There's the state laws, and then there's the requirements from VAWA. Because we receive federal funding, it was the reason we had to do all that uh, civil rights training last year. It's the
Mhm.
reason that, we have confidentiality. We have to abide by the confidentiality not only of the state law, but of the federal law, because we do receive those funds. So between so this covers all confidential communication between a DV sexual assault stalking victim and a counselor. If you have a third party involved, then confidentiality doesn't attach. There are some exceptions that we'll cover. And it covers basically all information received within the course of that relationship. So Domestic Violence Center is any organization or agency which would qualify as a direct service grantee under that RSA. Now, we, so the direct service grantee in our case is the coalition,
Coalition, yeah.
and then we are considered a sub-grantee. And so we also fall under the VAWA because we're a sub-grantee. Excuse me. All right. So any person who is employed, appointed, or who volunteers in a domestic violence center who renders support, counseling, assistance to any victim or attempted domestic violence abuse who has satisfactorily completed that 30 hours of training in a bona fide program which has been developed by the center has that confidentiality, which is basically all of us. Now, a victim has the privilege to refuse to disclose or prevent any person from disclosing any confidential communication made by them to us, including any record made in the course of support, counseling, or assistance. Any confidential communication or record may be disclosed only with written prior consent, and the privilege terminates upon death. So, um, they can, and we will cover, what specifically has to be in those written waivers. So under VAWA, it requires all grantees and subgrantees receiving VAWA funds through DOJ to protect the confidentiality and privacy of the people that they're providing services to. And obviously, that's designed to ensure the safety of all those people.
Mhm.
Right. Can I ask, it's a little off topic, but is there any chance of Starting Point losing or any of the um, agencies losing funding because of what's going on, that
Yes,
things
and
are getting lost? And we'll talk to any victim.
so yes and no. The yes is there has been some new requirements, I guess, if you will, to drop language, specifically around transgender. We're not to push a woke ideology, basically. So,
What happens if we get a call from someone who discloses that they are
oh, that's okay.
transgender
That's
or
okay.
were
We can still serve them.
okay?
We can still serve them. We just can't run around with a pride flag, you know? Okay.
Okay,
I
so
wasn't trying to do that in the first place, so it doesn't bother me, but
but Wraith is not going to be setting up the Pride booth
no,
at the festival in Schuler Park.
not identified as starting point anyways.
Okay, okay,
We can go there.
yeah,
We just
but we
can't,
can't sit and distribute our brochures or
no, and we shouldn't walk around with starting point jerseys.
anything. Right,
But, you know, we're allowed to do anything we want as a private citizen.
yeah,
Uh, Private citizen.
yeah,
Right.
But, you know, when I first started, and, you know, Fran, you were around in those days, there wasn't the big emphasis on, we serve those people, and we
yeah,
always have, and we still can't discriminate against those people because that's still a federal law.
that's right,
We just can't wave a flag,
right,
apparently. Or,
right.
you know, and we had to scrub some information off our website.
I don't think that it happens very often that a call would come in or something like that, or we would end up servicing someone like that. But just want to make sure that we're
Yeah.
in compliance because from what I understand, not all the agencies under Concord are 100% compliant.
Well, that's why I said yes and no,
Yeah,
because you know, some of them want to die on that hill.
yeah,
And fortunately, Deb's a little saner than that. And,
yeah,
you know, I feel the same way she does, that it's not worth losing that funding and
exactly.
not being able to support any of the victims.
Yep, you're right.
And it doesn't prevent us from supporting those victims still. We still can't discriminate against them.
Yeah,
So if they show up, we're going to provide service.
okay,
If they're a victim, we're going to provide service.
good,
Nothing is going to change.
okay.
Um, and so far, our funding hasn't been questioned.
Overall funding hasn't been questioned nationally. I mean, I don't know what's being cut and what's not, and well, I'm not sure anybody does, to
Well, I
be
think
honest.
right now they're going after big fish, easy, low-hanging fruit. You know, the 150-year-old who's still getting Social Security.
Yeah, they better not muck with mine. That's all I know.
Well, you're under 150. I think you're all set.
I am, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think the issue is, you know, when they're spending, you know, $5 million to promote tourism in Egypt.
I agree that there are some expenditures of
Yeah.
our federal budget that to me seem a little
They
questionable.
have pyramids. What to promote tourism? They have pyramids.
God.
Anyways, we
Anyway,
digress.
yeah, okay,
The short answer is so far our funding has not been
good,
touched, or nor does it look like it's going to be.
good.
Okay. So in
Um,
other words, starting point is kind of going below the radar and just
Yeah.
doing what always has gone on, but just
Being a little
not,
clear with our words.
we're just not going to lead the parade.
okay,
No,
You know, you can still go to the parade.
okay, yep, that's it. No, and I would want to be on that, you know, if something were to happen or come up, if something needs to be done, whatever, be on that list of,
We are going to still serve those people.
yeah, okay,
And there's still a federal law that says you can't discriminate against them. So
yep,
the same VAWA funds that tie to civil rights, protected
Mhm.
classes.
yep,
So they can tell us to take language out, but they can't tell us to stop serving those people. They just
Right.
can't.
good to know.
So, all right. So VAWA is a little different. So in the state law, it says that any communication within that relationship. So that would generally mean what you talked about. This says you may not disclose, reveal, or release personally identifying information collected in connection with services granted or denied. So if somebody calls and they're not appropriate for services and we deny services,
Mm-hmm.
they still have confidentiality. We still wouldn't disclose that we knew them or give any identifying information.
Yeah.
Um, and when they say personally identifying information, name, date of birth, where they live. A Conway police detective came in, showed that a picture, basically showed this picture that he pulled off the internet, and the amount of stuff he could tell us about that guy was amazing. And he got that all in like 10 minutes, where he was, what hotel he was in, just from that picture.
Wow.
Yeah. And when he was telling me all the stuff, when he was telling all the stuff he knew, I was thinking, oh God, it must have taken him hours to gather all this information. He said, oh, no. And then all of a sudden I found this all out in 10 minutes on the computer. So even sharing a picture, we had a client that fled with her kids to a hotel in Manchester. And he was, where are the kids? Where are the kids? Oh, they're safe. They're safe. Well, she took pictures of them in the pool
Oh,
area and in the
Oh,
hotel. And he saw the carpet design and basically called every hotel in Manchester till he found out where they were and sent the sheriff's department to go grab those kids. So you got to be very careful what you release and what you share.
Absolutely.
These people who move to a new location, don't be posting crap on Facebook, pictures of the area or, the kids at the playground. And, I can tell you, we've watched TV shows like a House Hunters or something like that, where they were down in Florida in places that we've been. And I'm going, hey, I know that place,
yeah.
you know. Um, Years ago when I was in high school, there was an explosion at a refinery in my dad's hometown down in Pennsylvania. And they showed this intersection. I said, hey, I think that's the intersection down in Franklin. And they all laughed. At first it's like, oh, no, 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 it isn't. And then of course the story came out that it was Franklin. And they're like, oh my God, you're right. It's like, I recognize the intersection. It was a pretty distinct intersection.
Yeah.
It's hard to get across to some of our clients that they need to stop sharing every moment of their life,
On
either in
Facebook.
pictures or in words on Facebook,
Yes.
because well, I've got him blocked. Well, that doesn't mean that he can't access one of your best friends and find out,
They
it
will find a way.
blows my mind.
They'll create a new identity
Yeah.
and come in that way. I can establish a Facebook page as anybody.
Yeah.
I can be a 13-year-old girl if I want to be. In fact, that's how a lot of police departments catch predators. They pose as a
Yep.
13-year-old girl.
Yep.
So
so
what is
I've had, sorry, I've had a couple of calls where it wasn't until I was in the conversation with the person that I find out that there's somebody else listening.
oh yeah, yeah.
And and I'm like, and truly at a loss as to what to say to them. But
Well,
I said, I said, I really would have appreciated to know this ahead of time.
yeah.
Um,
I usually tell them, if all of a sudden I'm aware of a third person, just so you're aware, whenever there's three people, confidentiality does not attach.
I
Yeah.
do tell them that, but
And
it's annoying.
I mean, that being said, it doesn't mean I'm going to go out and blab that I was in court with
Right.
somebody or something, but
But it doesn't mean that third person can't go out and do that.
well,
Right.
that, and if I get subpoenaed, I would have to testify,
Yeah.
So, so what is personally identifying information? Any information that could be used to directly or indirectly identify that individual. That's one thing when they do an address confidentiality program, the first thing we tell them is the second you get there, do not open up do not open up accounts in your name with your actual address. Use the address from the address confidentiality program.
Mhm.
If you've got an account in Eversource, your address is P.O. Box, whatever in Concord.
Mhm.
Um, you know, register to vote, all that stuff. Your address is P.O. Box, such and such in Concord. And don't post stuff online. Information that would disclose the location of an individual, the name, address, contact information, social security number, obviously.
I have a
Date of birth,
question.
even race or number of children can identify people. I mean, let's face it, there aren't that many black people in Conway, New Hampshire. When you say
No.
someone's black, you've automatically narrowed that pool down quite a bit. You know, when police departments use descriptions, it's partly to identify a suspect, but it's also to eliminate everybody else. You know, if I'm looking for a white male, I'm not stopping and questioning a black male other than, hey, did you see a white guy come by here carrying a gun?
So I have a question, Brad, in
Sure.
reference to the post office box address. So um in when you go to vote, um and you have a post office box address on your um
Yeah.
driver's license, they do ask, because I've heard them, they do
Yeah.
ask people,
What's your
what
physical
is your
address?
home address? What is your specific
Yeah.
address, so that they have the correct um so that they're in
So
the correct
yeah.
area. So what happens to their voting privileges
Oh,
if,
no, it's fine. So when they are a participant in the address confidentiality program, they have a card that
Okay.
identifies that. And
Okay, good.
their legal address is that P.O. box in Concord.
oh, okay,
And they don't have to give their physical address. Same if they get pulled over by the police and they say, well, wait a minute, you live here, but why do you have a P.O. box in Concord? Here's my card. And
Okay.
oh, okay.
when
So
they're
that
given,
that would
when they're
allow
gi-
them to vote wherever they live.
yeah, they're allowed to register to vote.
Okay.
Yeah, wherever they live, they're allowed to register to vote. That allows them to do all that stuff and not have their voting privileges or
What
right.
does the card, what does the card actually say?
I've never seen the card.
Hmm.
Oh,
I don't know. But I will tell you that the attorney, one of the instructions they're given is if somebody questions that, you give us a call. We'll straighten them out.
oh, okay.
Yeah, they'll be hearing from the Attorney General's office. Something you generally don't want to do is hear from the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
That's like hearing from the IRS. You don't want to hear from those
Yeah.
people.
No.
No, I was
Um,
just curious about that.
yeah. So there are some exceptions to that third person or other people. So a third person present to assist communication with the victim. So an interpreter, sign
Okay.
language. Though that's an exception. They would have the same confidentiality, and so confidentiality is still intact. A person present to assist somebody who's physically challenged is also an exception, as are co-participants in a support group. So, like if they're in the support group and they're sharing stuff, that's all protected under confidentiality.
Okay. Now, at the hospital, when I'm with a sexually assault, a sexual assault
Mhm.
victim, and Sharice is coming in to do the exam, does she have her own brand of confidentiality, or is she covered under that third person in the room
Well,
confidentiality in a
She has
medical?
the hospital
yeah, I was going to
confidentiality.
say HIPAA.
Okay.
Yes, HIPAA.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I would assume since she's providing a medical service that that's probably also
Yeah.
protected.
But
But
if
definitely under HIPAA, she's got the same confidentiality.
I'm in there and a police officer comes to do a preliminary questioning of the victim, confidential, the victim has to be very careful what they disclose for
So
confidentiality purposes?
we do go support police department, we do provide support at police departments, and that's a very good question because I don't know as I really know the answer to that.
Because
Because
I've
they
had
are,
the officers ask my name, and my standard answer is I'm a victim's advocate with Starting Point. I
yeah,
don't give them my name, and
yeah,
I have twice only been pressed, no, I need your name. I said, I'm a victim's advocate with Starting Point. I cannot give you my name.
yeah. I
And
will,
eventually,
they all know me, so they don't have to ask
yeah,
my name.
yeah,
Um,
you're in.
I will tell you that, the likelihood of you being called in to testify,
Yeah,
because anything you say is hearsay. You're just repeating what somebody else said.
yeah.
Um,
And also, if what they normally do is a very brief interview in the hospital,
yeah,
and they will ask the victim to come into the police station within about 48 hours and do a more
yeah,
comprehensive interview.
yep,
I understand that it is possible, if the victim chooses, for an advocate to be in the room with them during that interview.
yes.
What about confidentiality in that regard?
That's a good question. I would think since it's a police officer who's doing a job, you know what? I'm gonna have to look into that because I'm not 100% sure because technically I would say it does not, confidentiality does not exist in that room.
Yeah.
Kind of
The
confidentiality.
likelihood of you being called to testify is all hearsay.
Yeah.
Let me research that a little bit more and see if I can get an
Okay.
answer.
Good. Because I've always been very conscious of not putting myself in a position to be called to testify. That was always one thing that was really stressed from the get-go with training.
Yeah. You know what? There's a meeting coming up. Unfortunately, I'll be in Florida. Well, not unfortunately, but I'm going to miss the
Enjoy
meeting,
the
I guess is
sun.
the point. Um, but I'll email them and the program managers, and when they meet, see if they can address that question a little bit
Okay.
with the
Okay.
coalition.
I
So,
have a question. What kind of confidentiality do police officers have?
I don't believe they do. I mean, they won't discuss the inner workings of an ongoing investigation, but there's no big confidentiality.
Some of them will. There's a big case in Massachusetts going on, and that was part of it, is the
They just,
investigating officer was texting his wife, his family, denigrating the woman that's been being charged,
oh,
saying terrible things about her, but the whole case on text to his
Oh,
family and
and
wow.
friend,
see, that's why they shouldn't be shooting their mouth off because now it's going to
right?
jeopardize that case.
Right. Oh, absolute big time. And all his other cases,
Yeah.
because they couldn't. But back to in the room, if you're in the room with a police officer, that report is becoming public record anyway. So wouldn't that take our, like any third party confidentiality out? Because what is being said in that room is going into his report.
It is
And
going,
eventually it'll
it is
become
going into
public
the
record.
report and it will become a record at some point,
Mhm.
but in an investigation, they don't release those documents.
And
Right. Not
what's
right away, but he could be called to testify
Oh yeah, absolutely.
because right, does it right there, that make the confidentiality go away? Not that we would go out and say anything, but
I would say that that's a good point, and I would probably agree with that.
yeah.
and what about the crossover between what he hears and HIPAA laws if he's hearing what he's hearing in a hospital room with an examiner, a physician in there?
Well, he's not covered by HIPAA.
Yeah,
No,
he's not.
no. Okay.
Yeah, he or she.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I've never had a female officer come
oh,
and
Well, there
there's
aren't that many of them, you know.
no,
There's only well, three in total on Conway PD,
yeah,
and one of them's second in command, so she's not usually out on the road.
yeah.
And then the other
I
two
talked to
are
one of them.
in patrol. One of them's the canine handler, and the other one's just on patrol.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, so yeah. So anyways, assertion of waiver or privilege. So the privilege can be claimed or waived in any civil, administrative, and criminal legal proceedings, including discovery, by the following people: the victim or an attorney acting on the victim's behalf, the guardian of the victim, if the victim has been found incompetent by a court of competent jurisdiction, a minor, this one tripped us up. Remember in training, this next one tripped us up a little bit. A minor victim who is emancipated, married, or over the age of 15, unless in the opinion of the court, the minor is incapable of knowingly waiving the privilege.
Hmm.
A guardian ad litem shall be appointed in all cases in which there is a potential conflict of interest between a victim under the age of 18 and his parent or guardian. So if there's a clashing of interests, if you will,
Hmm.
they'll appoint a guardian
But a GAL is not appointed if the victim has been emancipated.
correct,
Okay.
because
Even though the victim might be 16.
if they're
Correct.
16 and they're emancipated or they're married, they are considered an adult
Okay.
capable of making their own decision
Okay.
and capable of asserting that privilege or not.
That's really frightening to think.
How do you how does a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old prove that they're emancipated?
Well, usually they're illegally emancipated. There's some kind of court order that you have to
I know
you have to
that, but
you
do
have
they
to file
carry
for
something
emancipation.
around with them?
You don't just become emancipated
No, I know that. That
until
part
you
I
turn
do know.
18, but you have
Let's
to.
say a 16-year-old shows up at the hospital to get treated for something, and they say, "Oh, I'm an emancipated minor." So how would that child actually, or that person actually prove to the person they're talking to that he or she is emancipated?
Well, I doubt they would carry the paperwork with them, but they would probably have some type of court order that would be able to show that.
Okay.
But whether they carry that on their person or not, who knows? It's not something I'd carry around with me unless I thought I was going to be an issue.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When can you share information under VAWA? Okay, so this goes into the written release again. And here are some of the requirements. Well, actually, here's some of the thing. So when the victim provides a written, informed, and that word informed is very important, reasonably time-limited consent to the release. Now, they don't tell you what a reasonable time limit is. But generally, the shorter, the better. When we do releases, we do, it's in writing what we can share, who we can share it with,
Mm-hmm.
when it starts, when it ends,
Mm-hmm.
and also that the victim can revoke it at any time.
Okay.
Just because they sign it for 30 days doesn't mean it's going to be in place for 30 days. The next day they can say, you know what, I changed my mind. And
Okay.
that's it. They can reinstate their confidentiality. So when a state law compels the information to be released, and in the state of New Hampshire, that state law is the fact that we are mandatory child abuse reporters.
Okay.
So that's an example of a state law.
Elder abuse as well.
I believe so, yeah, elder abuse, but we don't have a duty to warn in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
Some states do.
Hmm.
And so under VAWA, that is a statute that compels the information to be released. When the court compels the information to be released by court order, If you're compelled to make a release, please make all attempts to let the person know that you're being compelled to do that for their own
Okay.
privacy and safety. So counselor's duty to report child abuse. This is New Hampshire law again, 169C29. We have the same reporting duties under that RSA as other professionals. So doctors, therapists, any child abuse, we are mandated reporters. So that's an example of a state law.
Is your preference that if we're taking a crisis call or speaking with a client and there is the perception that a child has been in the vicinity where abuse has occurred, is it your preference that we talk with you about it and you make the report? I'm not comfortable calling
Yeah, no, we've
CYF.
we've historically done that.
Okay.
You know, we've historically had the volunteers give us the information.
Yeah.
We then call and make the report.
Yeah.
Um,
But I do make a point if I suspect that there may be some reason to do that. I do let the person I'm speaking with know that
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking with a staff member and there's a potential for a report.
Now, most likely before we make that report, we would call them and
Yeah.
say to them, listen, if you want to make this report, we'll sit down with you and make the report, or you can just call and then we'll make a report individually, but we'll give you time to make the report first.
Yeah.
So that way, you know, they get in front of it, basically.
Yeah.
So, again, releases must be written, reasonably time limited, signed by the victim and or appropriate parent and guardian. I recently had a release signed by a juvenile and her parent. Normally I would sign it, but I had the parent sign it. Specific scope of what information can be disclosed and to whom.
Okay.
Neither federal nor state law provides for oral releases. In other words, they can't just give you permission to do it. You can merge a call with a third party if you need to communicate between three people, but understand that confidentiality is no more. Often when I'm in court with somebody and a lawyer comes in, you know, if they need to speak to their client, I'll say, do you need me to leave the rooms if you're going to have a confidential conversation?
Mm-hmm.
And they're not shy about asking you to do that. But a lot of times they'll say, no, we're not going to be talking about anything confidential. You can stay.
Okay.
So you can give them information about who to call. So in other words, if they say, well, can you call this person on my behalf? Or, you know, not without a waiver, I can't. Not without a written release, I can't.
Yeah.
But we can say, well, you can call them and tell them, you know, tell them this, tell them that, you know, give them some direction. Now, we also do have the ability to DocuSign. So Krista and Penny are our two DocuSign gurus.
Except somebody signed my name, only it wasn't me.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but anyway,
it was funny.
we just had you sign it in person.
Yeah.
But we'll send a DocuSign out to, you know, most people can just sign it and send it back, and then we have a release. Victims cannot be forced into signing a release as a condition of receiving services. In other words, we'll never say, well, if you don't sign this, we're not going to help you. All right. Did I already do that? Yep. All right. Duty to warn. So some states do have a duty to warn. New Hampshire does not have a duty to warn. So therefore, we are not compelled to release that information. Therefore, unfortunately, we can't. If somebody calls and says they're suicidal, we can give them the suicide prevention number. We can even offer to make a third-party call with them and merge the call. But we can't circumvent that, you know. I've only had one person that I thought, oh my God, they're going to kill themselves.
I had one. but it was years ago.
Yeah, me too.
When did this New Hampshire not having the duty to warn come into being? Do you know?
As far as I know, it's always been.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I sure,
Now this only I believe only applies to like us. I don't think it applies to like if my sister called and said she was going to kill herself in my capacity as a brother and a private citizen, I'm under no obligation for confidentiality. You know, it's only because we don't have a obligation for confidentiality.
yeah. Because I had a situation, it was years ago, a woman was threatening. She was in the lower part of the state down near Dover, I think, and she was despondent and she wanted to step onto the railroad tracks when a train was coming.
That'll
And
do it.
she called me from the edge of the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And I called my backup at the time. I don't remember who it was. It was, like I say, it was years ago. And they said that if I could keep her on the phone and get a hold of the police in that town and get those calls connected, that I could do that. So I did. And eventually the officer said, it's okay, we've got her.
Oh, good.
But that was like, yike. Because she was standing right there and she said the train was imminent. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I got a call one time from somebody that we knew well. Um, she was standing on we'd had a lot of rain and she was standing on the edge of the river behind her
Okay.
house and I could hear the river roaring.
Wow.
And she said, I'm standing by the water. It looks so pretty. And I'm like, oh my God. And we're talking back and forth. And finally I said, where are your kids? They're back home. The neighbor's watching them. I said, what is going to happen to your children tomorrow morning when they wake up and you're not there?
Yeah.
And we talked, I basically, I used her kids to get her off the ledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she says, okay, I'm going to go back home. I'm walking home now. I'm going to put my phone in my pocket. And I could hear her talking as she was walking. I could hear the crunching
Yeah.
and I could hear her saying, I'm going to be safe now. And what's going to keep me safe is in my pocket.
Okay.
Because that's where she put her phone.
Yeah.
And I heard her walk back to the house. I heard her open the door. And as soon as she walked through the door, it was like she was a normal human being again.
Wow.
Hey, how's it going? Oh, kids. It's like, oh my God, that's scary.
Yeah. I guess we have to remember we are not responsible for another person's life.
You you can't, I mean, usually if somebody calls, they want to be talked out of it.
Yeah.
Um, but
And this,
if somebody's really determined to kill themselves, you are not going to stop them.
that call that I got that night about the lady at the railroad tracks, it was before the suicide hotline had been put into
Yeah,
play.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So sometimes law enforcement comes looking for a victim. They may need them as a witness. They may need, that maybe there's a court case and they're looking to subpoena them as a witness for their criminal case.
Yeah.
We can't confirm or deny that we know them,
Yep.
but what I'll usually tell them is if I know that person, I will make every effort to contact them and let them know that you're looking for them.
Yeah.
And they'll usually tell me why they're looking for them, or if they don't, I'll ask, so what do you need them for? Oh, well, we need them to testify in their case and want to issue a subpoena. We will make every effort to find that person if we know them and convey that to them. But we can't confirm that we actually made contact or know the person. I can't call the police department and say, hey, I called her. She's going to give you a call.
Yeah.
Warrants, we treat it a little differently. I don't know if we still do. We still can't confirm or deny, but if they're staying in the shelter, we tell them they have to go clear that warrant.
Yeah.
You have to go clear
Yeah.
that up if you want to keep staying here. You
Yeah.
can go find someplace else to stay, but you have to clear that warrant up because we don't want the police coming and making an arrest in the shelter if we don't have to.
No, I know there have been times I have heard that the police have actually come to the door and knocked,
They
looking for,
have, they
yeah,
have. Most of the police departments, they kind of know better a little bit, but yeah, they have come and knocked, and of course the shelter guests are always told not to answer the door for anybody.
yeah,
You know, that they need to let staff answer the door.
yeah.
So
That works well. It works better with the adults, but if there's kids in
yeah,
the
yeah,
shelter that answer
they
the
open the
door,
door.
oh yeah, I'll go get her.
Yeah, exactly. You can't control that.
No.
Yeah, you can't control that. Fortunately, it's very it happens very infrequently.
Yes.
It really depends on the guests we have too. Some attract more police attention than the others.
Yeah, I can think of a few.
Yeah, we've had a few. Um, I don't know if you remember the young lady she was going out with them and then she'd get drunk and then she'd start a big fight and go crazy and get arrested.
Yeah,
Even the shelter guests were saying, "Oh my God, she's crazy."
yeah.
And we were due to put her on a bus. And I happened to go over to the court first thing in the morning, and then I was going to swing by and pick her up at the shelter and take her to the bus. I pull into the parking lot and I see the cruiser parked at the front of the PD. I was like, well, that's kind of privileged parking there. Well, then I found out why he was parked there. He was going in to get somebody. He comes out leading her in handcuffs. And I'm like, what the hell? So apparently she told them that she was due to go on a bus. So they were just going to release her. They drove her back to the shelter and left her there. Because when I got there, she was there and she just hopped in the car with me and put her on a bus.
Yeah. It's not going to be our problem anymore.
No, I wait till the bus pulls away.
Good.
And then I drive away as quickly as possible. The funny thing about her is she was on her way out to South Dakota and apparently it was some guy she met online and she got halfway there and he said he didn't want her to come. So she said, he called me and told me he didn't want me to come. I don't know what you want us to do now. We never heard from her again. I don't know if she
Or investigate the nearest domestic violence agency in South Dakota or wherever
I have
she
no
was.
idea. I don't know if she
Yeah.
continued or she traded in her ticket for another destination or what, but
Yeah.
anyway. Other than the police department question, any other questions?
Mm-mm.
Well, I'm going to find out the answer to that because I agree with you. I don't think it does. I think confidentiality goes out the window when you're there. So
Yeah.
we clearly want to avoid that. So I pull up the fancy little thing here. Questions? No. Okay, so let's stop the share. And let's stop the recording. How do we do that? Stop.